All right, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday. Seems to be a warm Tuesday in a lot of parts of the world, especially here in the northeast of the U.S., which is relatively cold. I think I saw like 70 degrees in the forecast this week and just like couldn't believe it. Welcome, Ken. How are you, buddy?
That's like 100 degrees for us right now, right? I
Yeah,
think I think 50 degrees feels like it's warm and balmy outside. I saw people in shorts today, t-shirts, and I was actually feeling it myself. It's pretty nice out there.
100%, 100%. So, just trying to get a little bit out of the cave and out of the hats and gloves, and a little bit of vitamin D would be good. So I'm looking forward to a little bit of putting the windows down while I'm driving down the road. You know what I mean?
I definitely hear you. I love to get out. I took a quick ride to Boston, and it was nice while I did that. But now I'm back in the little ice box that is the basement.
Right on.
Do you like this the background here? How's that?
Yeah, Tony,
Tony,
Tony.
Tony on the Game of Thrones throne. Thought that
I
was pretty.
mean, he was the best for sure. All right, a little bit of housekeeping. So we have again Channel Strong tour and lunch and learns happening over the next week after. So if you're in Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, come on out. So we have lunch and learns and our Channel Strong evening kind of activities each day. You can register for those on mspinitiative.com/. Just click on Channel Strong. You can see the lunch and learns are also there under a separate tab. And lastly, our monthly giveaway, where we have multiple vendors popping in, and once a day, everybody's eligible. So you have nothing to lose. Just throw your name in that. You may get some good stuff.
Not everybody's eligible. You made it clear that I can't win.
Well, if you work for a vendor that's participating or a vendor in general, that would disqualify you for sure.
Dang it.
But if you're an
Dang it.
MSP or an IT services company or cloud provider that isn't a vendor, that would qualify you. Some cool stuff that people are giving away. These guys down here, all these vendors that are helping us out, just kind of throwing some good stuff in the mix. So anyway, 12 days this week, 12 or this month, 12 prizes. Can't go wrong. This week, there's 12 days in a week. God forbid.
There isn't our weeks.
Yeah, well, that's true. So anyway, yep, check out the Channel Strong Tour, lunch and learns, giveaways, all online. Easy sign up, no cost to you. Would love to see you come out and have a beer, hang out. Yeah,
a beer, a Coke Zero, whatever you're into.
Well, it's not Coke Zero Cherry.
Just not Coke Zero Cherry. But that's not me. I'm not thinking about just me. I'm just saying.
Okay. All right.
I'm pretty sure I probably will have a beer, but
just one?
Maybe not.
Okay, we'll see. So couple topics. I've narrowed our topics this time, although we kind of did machine gun last time.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
What we do.
It's all good. So this one I thought was interesting. Did you know your browser extensions are looking at your bank account?
Yep.
Well, that's not great.
Yeah.
No. Better double check those browser extensions, people. I don't want people.
Yeah. I check them quite frequently just because I feel like you don't know what you don't know, like we've talked about in the past. And I've seen that DuckDuckGo thing slide in there, and I'm like, I don't remember putting that thing in there.
Yeah. I a little worried about that. I don't want any. You better double check your browser extensions and their permissions, because kind of like your cell phone, right? Everybody who's been doing what's the latest rage now? Clubhouse, and then they're recording all your conversations. No, thank you. No, thank you.
That's a good thing about having an Android, because Clubhouse only works for Apple. So
yeah, but TikTok works on Android, and they're recording all your stuff, not just on your microphone, but there. You want to talk about who's going to take money out of your bank accounts? Those guys, remember? I keep on.
I don't have TikTok. No TikTok here either.
Yeah, no, she does. I'm worried about her, but what can I say? So I thought that was interesting, that people didn't even pay attention to that. So double check your browser extensions here. I'm a big Surface guy. I'm using a Surface Book 3 actually. And I actually have my original Surface Book that I still roll around with too. But it looks like in addition to Intel, Microsoft's going to be offering AMD. I don't know if I was ever a big fan of AMD CPUs.
No, thank you. No bueno.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing, and maybe it's changed like anything else. I would hate to say, no way on things that I haven't done in a while. Obviously, I'm not doing any hardware nowadays, but back in the day when we were buying these things, it was all AMD looked like it was crushing Intel until you put a load on it. So every time you read one of these tests, right, that they ran on the Intel and AMD
benchmark test, yeah,
the benchmark test, they were way up here, and then you come to find out that's with no load. And then you go and load it back in the day when it was semantic, put semantic on both and see where AMD is. It's like, just kill them.
My hope is that things are better now, but yeah.
I'm assuming that maybe they are, but to this day, I would still prefer an Intel over an AMD chipset.
Yeah, i7, my man. i7 for sure. Or i5 if i7's too expensive. Okay. Right on. Let me kill some of these and kill. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna get into, I guess, some beefier topics, less topics, but longer conversation today. Unlike last week, which was like 2 minutes per topic. There's just a lot of news happening. Do you agree with this headline? MSPs that did not move on-prem Exchange service to the cloud blew it.
Yeah, I think that's sensationalism at its best. That's people who either were only looking for the headline or don't really know what MSPs go through. I mean, look at the MSPs that kept the on-prem because they love it. Sure. But most MSPs work their hardest to get their customers to switch over to the cloud and tried to push in that direction. But not always that simple with certain customers that you have, right? Or maybe they're running tools that they required them to stay a little bit longer. I wouldn't say blew it. I would say moving forward, the urgency should be there. And we've talked about.
Well, we kind of touched on this last week when this whole zero day thing kind of hit. I'm surprised. I personally am surprised by the number of on-prem Exchange servers still out there. Yep. I really am, especially when, the sub 100 orgs. I don't compute. I don't understand the math. I don't understand the aggravation. Like, why do you have to keep just, duct taping and keep running these things? Like, we talked about small business server. I know it's long gone, although some people still have it out there. And, obviously Exchange on-prem, I guess for certain organizations, they think they can do it, or there's requirements where they're really concerned about having on their own. But like for the average sub 100 user entity, whether it's profit, nonprofit, sports, whatever, what is at this point, why do we have the box in the closet? I don't get it.
Yeah, I can't answer that question either, because I'm with you on that, right? We've talked about this so many times. I mean, we know that people want to hug their servers and keep them close, and there's that mentality, right? Hey, I have control of it. It's here.
But okay, let me qualify though. Let me qualify. A lot of the times there is an inherent cost break scenario. Here's what I mean, right? Like if you made an investment in a prem-based application and your vendor comes to you and says, hey, we want you to move to our cloud. We're going to give you no credit for what you've already spent, but we're going to switch you to the cloud. And when you look at your annualized costs, it's like 3x of you just keep on doing what you're doing. Obviously, there's other benefits there, but at the end of the day, like the upfront math breaks, right? It's not the case with Exchange. At $4, which is the lowest possible pricing SKU you can spend, how do you lose? How do you lose on the cloud SKU versus the on-prem box? I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just being devil's advocate and throwing out why, but listen, we were on a call last week with some very mature MSPs who said they either couldn't be on the call or they were leaving the call early because they were dealing with some of this, right? I mean, I'm not going to throw names out there, but we had one of our more mature MSPs that works in security and does this who said, yeah, I'm dealing with this issue today.
But like for me, if I'm an MSP and I'm walking into a prospect and they tell me, look at my stuff, give me a price, the first thing I'm going to say is that's got to go. Like, I'm not doing it. Or if you want to do it.
All right. So George, I agree with that, but I'm also going to say maybe there were some people who just got transitioned over in the last year and they just made that investment, brand new box, because the previous person was not that great. So maybe some of these MSPs are just dealing with stuff that they know.
All right.
Right.
But maybe the plan was. That's the exception.
Right.
That's the exception.
Right.
And quite frankly, I would still argue I'll turn around and try and repurpose that or sell that sucker.
Oh, I get it. Right. Not everybody's going to have the same on that. I agree, though, if you're an MSP or calling yourself in George's quotation marks, an MSP, and you haven't at least had the discussion and put a plan in place for that equipment to go bye-bye, then that thing is right. You blew it. That part I'll agree with. But I won't say that everybody blew it who had on-prem Exchange servers, because I do believe there are varying reasons for why they are where they are, right? And maybe the more mature MSPs have thousands of those and they're working through getting them changed up, but they can't do them all in one swing, right?
Sure, I get it. I mean, at the end of the day, like, and again, back to last episode, right? Small business server, right. Microsoft BPOS, right? That kind of was.
Oh God, now you really.
Okay, hold on. Which then there was Office 365 that came behind BPOS, right? I mean, we're talking 2010, 2011, 2012. We're 10 years down the road, you know?
I agree, right? And I think people follow that if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it mentality a little too far.
Except the world has gotten scarier in cyber land. And when the CEO of Microsoft, now granted, could be self-serving here, I'll say that, comes out and says, hey, if you're doing it on premise, it's on you. Don't call us. But it's a 0-day exploit. It comes from you. Like, it's a little bit of I'm self-serving here on that messaging. CEO.
Yeah, a little bit, but they're also, it's not like they haven't been pushing cloud for the last however many years either. They've been pushing in this direction. I mean, even their incentives are all wrapped around going with not only cloud, but they're moving more from away, more incentivizing for the M365 than they are for the O365, because they're not only doing cloud, but they're pushing the security piece, right? So they're really trying to drive things in that direction. If you're not listening or you're not paying attention, that's where the blew it.
Okay, so all right, but let's back up a second. Like, I understand Microsoft's trying to go everything subscription based, like every other software company on the planet for obvious reasons. But like, do you see themselves, like, I understand if you're in a high enough tier of 365 and you get the enterprise version of Windows, whatever, but like, I'm not seeing the actual down to the operating system. Can they reasonably, like, they're going the other way. I just saw that they're putting out finally a new version of off-the-shelf Microsoft Office without the subscription. Like, like, it just seems weird how that, I don't know if it's a retail thing. I don't know. Like, everything as a service obviously doesn't work. Like, I'm not going to go get a chair as a service. I'm just going to buy the chair.
Well, we've talked about a few varying as a service things working, my friend. So we'll stay off of that subject. But we have done the whole as a service thing and joked about certain things as a service. But one other thing I wanted to throw out there, as you were talking through this, I was trying to think of, okay, what good and bad things happened when I used to run Exchange servers, and so many bad. So many just managed bad, like so much.
I mean, but your sentence right there today, right? Like March 9th, 2021 is, well, if Microsoft 365 is down, which they've had problems.
It happens, right?
Then my mail server is still running. Like, that's like one of the few.
Yeah, sure. But if you're an MSP and you have 30 clients and they're all are 80% of them are in the cloud, and that goes down, they're more understanding because they know everybody is down, right? It does make that does make sense when they say, well, we know this is a whole thing. And by the way, it doesn't happen as often as your Exchange server going down and having those problems. So I was thinking about the good and the bad, but one thing I remember was the getting compliant with like PCI. PCI used to rip the Exchange server apart. Like, they would come back to you and say, hey, it's not compliant. You got to figure it out. And then you'd have to run some test on the, the Microsoft, I forget what it was called, like a bench test, Exchange.
Yeah, it was like best practice analyzer.
Best practices, right, exactly. And you'd have to run that, and it would tell you which things to fix. You had to go in and apply these patches and whatever hot fixes and things like that, and then go back and take the PCI thing over again. That's not happening with when you move it to the cloud. It's done. So there's a lot of little things that I remember chasing. And again, I'm talking about, longer than 5 years ago.
Sure.
So, and when you think about it that way, then you're saying, like you said, well, then why are we still dealing with them?
It just seems like it so like, does the article's headline sensational? Okay. They blew it. MSPs who didn't move their customers to cloud already on the email blew it. financially, it makes sense that the headline ties into that because I don't see how the math breaks the model. I understand one size doesn't fit all, but the majority of people should be there. I just found it really mind-boggling when so many people were like, yeah, sorry, I'm still patching Exchange servers. And I'm like, how do you have that many out there? Like 1, 2, 3, but like single-digit percentage here. I mean, right?
Yeah, and apparently that's not the case. I mean, I'm sure as more security breaches happen and things like this of this nature, we're going to find some things out there that we wouldn't normally believe would still be floating around out there. We've all heard the stories where, an MSP says, you won't believe it, I walked into a shop today and they had Windows XP on this machine in the warehouse that was running, all this stuff, and it was still connected to the internet.
Well, I mean,
the
some
open door
degree,
in the open door in the vault, right?
I mean, listen, there's old school stuff, right? Like, like I ran into a guy who said, yeah, we're supporting a company. They have their own gas pump instead of like sending their employees to the, like whether it's the bus, the school buses or the municipality,
Right.
like basically they're paying less gas per gallon because they're not required to pay all those taxes, at the pump, right? At the local down the street gas station.
Right.
But like the gas station terminal is running on XP. And I'm like, okay, well, but it's going to cost $15,000 for them to change what they need to change to get off of XP. And it's like, okay, I understand the math problem, but you're wide open if this thing's connected to the internet, and it is, right? So like, I don't know. It's catch-22. You can't run things forever, right? Anyway. Brent, of course. Nothing is fixed. The problem has just shifted. Example, purchase a Windows 10 Home to Pro, upgrade from PAX 8 and try and get support from PAX 8 states. We don't support this product that we sell. Okay. Well, that hits home a little bit because we have Ken on the call. I mean, listen, I understand that, like Microsoft.
Well, hold on a second, Brent. Call me on that one if that's a real problem, because that was an interesting post. I would love to check it out and see it. Here you go. Darren says, I'd still run XP if I could.
I hear you, man. I do. I got you. Yeah, listen, the mesh between the standalone, buy the license, install it yourself versus the cloud, right? I mean, like I understand Microsoft's strategy of trying to make it so that you don't have to go to 3 different places to buy their stuff, right? Like if you got to go to a retail store or to Microsoft directly to buy one way, you got to go to one type of distributor to buy it another way, and then you got to go to another type of distributor. Like at some point, why is it so complicated to click buy, right? So from that angle, I can understand merging the buying experience, right? Because Amazon set the bar, it's high. Single, right. The easier it is to buy, the easier it is for you to get where you need to go, right? It helps them, it helps you. But as far as support's concerned, like, what's your support avenue for an on-premise product, right? You have Action Pack, you have Silver, you have Gold, you have whatever, or you got to open up a ticket. Sometimes you got to pay for it if you don't have a status. And then you're sitting in queue, right, for Microsoft from wherever country they're answering the call from, right? I mean, that's the avenue, right? I'm not happy with that avenue, by the way. I think it could be much better, but Microsoft's not listening to me. A better chance they're listening to Ken.
Yeah, and that scenario, when it's in the cloud, you don't have that whole flow because they're working on it because it's affecting everybody.
Sure. Which comes back to side topic that I wasn't planning on talking about, but you almost need to have a notification system that isn't email based. Like SaaS companies, software companies have status pages, right? Does the MSP have a status page now? Does the MSP have some sort of messaging system where people can get text messages or subscribe to an RSS feed or get a push notification? Or it almost seems like that's a must if you can't communicate to them because their email system's down and that's how they get notified of outages, right? Am I wrong here?
Right. Unless you're calling.
I mean, listen, calling's good too, but how many people?
It's not going to blanket the approach. It's going to take longer to call, especially based on the number of clients you have.
Sure. So I don't know, something to think about. I feel like, you can get a status page where people can subscribe and multiple threads and get it into their teams and Slack and all that for like, I don't know, $50 to $75 a month. I mean, it's Not super expensive, right? But it may serve the purpose when you can't get the email out, right?
Right. No, I think that's a great idea. But you know, there are some complaints when something goes for free and costs $4. So, you know, the thought process around paying that.
Well, but and just to wrap up, like final thoughts on this particular topic. All right, so you have the on-premise Exchange server. You don't want to get rid of it, right? You have the box, you have the software, you have the maintenance and time. Then you have the backup, right? You got to back up that system. By the time you wrap it all together between what you charge your customer to support it, you know, what it takes for you to put the time investment in, what it takes to keep, you know, the hardware refresh every so often, and then what it takes to back it up. Then you go over to the other side and you're like, all right, it's $4, but then you should still back it up. So that's maybe another $1 or $2, $6. And then you need email security on both sides, right? But that's another couple bucks. And then by the time you're done, $4 turns into $10. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. But it's a hell of a lot cheaper than, you know, having to buy a full-on DRBC box to keep things up and running in your office.
Okay. All right.
You're right. No, I mean, SaaS backup is clearly much less expensive and, you know, does everything that you needed to do from a standpoint of backing up all your email products and all the things that are in each of those. Because we all know Microsoft doesn't back it up. They've put out
they give you 30-day recycling bin, right?
Yeah, good luck with that. I still say, you know, if you're living off of that, you got to make some changes. You need to have a good SaaS backup in place to back up all these products because Microsoft is not backing them up. That's the clear straight line. And they're not. They're putting that on the MSPs. Oh boy.
I can't help but go to this article. I couldn't. It just was too entertaining and just I have to go here. Okay. So our favorite buddy Fred, who's probably as entertaining as you can get from a guy running a company with a lot of zeros in the bank account. Had a pretty long interview here with our friends over at CRN, and a couple of things I pulled out of here, so bear with me. So Fred's saying that there's a 66% chance that they're going to be a public company this year.
75%.
And a 75% chance that it's going to happen before the end of Q1. So they're shopping the company right now, yeah? They're shopping, right? Of course, you can't help but notice that, you know, this is the thing right underneath of it. We've talked about this, but you know, they're shopping this company, right? They're in the middle of going and putting up the for sale sign or the invest in me sign. We're going public. No?
Yeah, and that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing.
Well, it's interesting though when you read why, right? So this is like I'm not going to every page of this interview, but this one like feeds right into that. Why all of a sudden the public move, right? What's the push? And the response is, well, there's financing out there available to everybody that's not going public, right? Like back in the day, VCs and PEs and all these funding sources kind of weren't accessible. You had the traditional bank, and then you had, you know, the investment bank was kind of still hard to get to unless you were a certain size. He's saying here, hey, those resources are plentiful. You can go out there and get the money if you want it. The reason we're going public is to compensate the people who originally invested so that they can get some money out of it, including the employees. Right? There needs to be some sort of liquidity event in order for those people to get compensated on the early, you know, kind of buy-in status now.
Right.
And what actually then went further is that they're only putting somewhere between 10 to 20% of the company as far as shares available. So when you think about it, going public is like could be only a really small portion of the math, right?
Right.
But I never thought about that until he's like, yeah, 10, 15, 20%. Oh, Google does the same thing. Okay, news to me. I mean, it turns out that the VCs that drop all these monies in these funding rounds, A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever it is, they're still holding a large control of these companies even after they go public.
Yeah, this is true. And I guess don't want to go too deep into that, trying to not say the wrong thing, but
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, we're learning, right? We're not at that level, right? And it's just interesting that regardless of the company, it's really only a small. It's not like they're putting half the company up for stock options, right? It's really only a small percentage.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, we've definitely seen that where we thought people might have done quite well and didn't necessarily do as well as we thought they would because of the breakdown in percentages.
So I thought it was interesting because it seems like this is now the very popular thing to do for the big guys, right? The big four in the industry are already there, right? They're the last to get there, right? ConnectWise isn't there yet, but they're talking about it. I guess Datto already did, SolarWinds or Enable, whatever name.
Right.
Okay, and now Kaseya. So really, it's the the last man in is going to be the the ConnectWise umbrella, which I can't. I'm not trying to get in trouble. I'm just simply reporting, showing what's been reported. Right, here we go. He has to go and say, well, I think ConnectWise is having struggles. And then he goes into them, and he goes into Datto, and he goes into everyone else if everybody wants to read this. But basically, the moral of the story is the people running the company. The people running the company make a big difference, right? He talked about the early days of Kaseya. He talked about, Arnie Bellini being a big man in the room and hard shoes to fill. He talked about, Austin McCord, no longer at Datto. He talked about Michael George no longer in the picture after the Continuum sale.
Right.
How much at the top level do the people sitting in those chairs make the difference?
I mean, it depends on where they are on the maturity level of when it all happened. I mean, I think it's funny if you really read into that. What he's saying is he would like to stay when they get bought out. I mean, think about it. It's a straight up play. This person's smart and they're gone. This person's smart and they're gone. Okay, we get it. What you're saying is you want to stay when they come in and take over. I mean, I don't think that Datto would have got to where they got without Austin being in charge and just not really being that, he didn't come from a CEO or business background per se, right? He was an engineer who had a dream. And I think as much as people maybe rib for the CEO portion of it missing is the same reason why they were so successful, because he wasn't kind of, coming at it from that CEO standpoint. And I think it also depends on how open they are to help. And I think Austin in this case was very open to taking help and getting advice and running with that advice. And then, they brought Rob Ray on, and Rob Ray was a big boost to Datto's ecosystem and community. And so, yeah, from that standpoint, I would say, it did make a difference. The person that was making those decisions and open to change. I don't know. I can't honestly say for a lot of these other ones, what that difference was, because I wasn't dealing directly with those companies. But I'm sure in some cases, if that person is, very connected to the employees and was very connected to the heart of what the company does and is, it can definitely have an effect if they're no longer there anymore. People don't feel that connection with a PE company that they did with, those people, if they had that type of connection. Not saying that all these guys have that connection with their employees. I know a few of them that definitely don't, but it could definitely have an effect. I just don't know where on some of these, not definitely directly connected enough to know, where the family of some of these companies were like, oh my God, I can't live without, that CEO.
Sure.
So then this, if it happened at Pax8, it would have some kind of effect because our leader, John Street, is that type of person. His vision is what we all sell. It's like, I said it this morning in a session, it's like Disney World, right? Walt Disney had this dream and this vision, and look, however many years later he's passed away, and 50,000 employees buy into that same mentality. That's where you see it making a big difference. Sure, things can still run because people have bought into it and gotten to a certain point, but it would be at Pax8, it would be a big deal to lose someone like a John Street, because his vision is what drives our company from the top down.
No, I get it. I get it. So directly to our last conversation, right, when we were talking about companies swooping in, buying other companies, all this jazz, is like, and really down here is where I was paying attention, right? Typical customer of Kasei adopts another module of IT Complete. This is the name of their stack now of all their every month to 3 months, right? So their idea from their side of the aisle is keep acquiring companies, keep stacking, keep creating bundleized pricing so that the more that you buy, hopefully the better the price you get. Hopefully, I don't know that to be the case, but that's my guess. And then he's saying, listen to this. We don't recommend people switch everything right away. Too risky. But they see the value of integration. And then he gets into some of the math, right?
Yeah, says that they charge 30% less, which
is that true? Is that as the bundle individual?
Yeah. How do you compare them? That's the thing. What do they have? How do they compare? Yeah, that's an interesting number.
So like he's saying a lot of when they're looking at the full stack, right? We talked a couple of weeks ago about the MSP's view. We had Cole Halpin
Right.
on, and he said, I'm almost looking to make my vendors as disparate as possible so that they're not all tied together. But then on the other side, it's a complete 180 view. And you see the kind of the furthering of that understanding, which is we want you to adopt more and more and more. And the more that you adopt, and we understand it won't happen at once, but the more that you buy and buy and buy, the better we'll give you pricing terms rather than individual products.
Right.
I get supply demand. It's a simple business, conversation, but there's a constant fear, right, that too many eggs in one basket end up coming back to hurt you. So like there's a complete break, right? There's like a schizophrenic break between what the MSP's feeling is and what the company that they're buying from or trying to sell to the MSP is thinking, right?
Sure. Yep.
So I mean, do you so let's zoom out for a second and talk about that. You're in a very unique position. I'm not trying to target you, but I'm just gonna put it out there so that we say that we checked the box and talked about it. You're aggregating a bunch of different vendors under one umbrella, right? Technically, even though they're paying you, the distributor, they're really the customer of the vendor, right? Whether it's this backup product, this security product, this whatever. Okay. In the case of I'm now acquiring these companies, I'm not selling somebody else's product. I've now acquired that. That's my stuff. And I'm trying to get you to shift over to my stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your case, you have multiple options to choose from. In their case, they're like, here's our option, but we want you to shift all these line items over, right?
Right.
I mean, I can understand from the view of the MSP that the guy that they're writing the check to at the end of the day is still, you got to make sure the company's healthy and there's a relationship and there's communication and there's a good vibe happening, right?
Right.
But it's a little bit different when you're schlepping your own stuff versus you're bundling other products that you're not responsible for the development and upkeep and security and all the other stuff. I mean, do you think that's really the majority of the view, or does a certain size of MSP say, I want the best deal? The customer doesn't care what products underneath the hood. They just want it to work. They know that their stuff needs to be backed up. They don't care. They just, it's on me to just decide what product I'm using, right? How do you feel, where do you fit in your personal view? I don't know, you're not necessarily talking for John Street, but for your personal view, where do you fit into this spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's a lot of different views. And, you and I have had this conversation before, and I even say this to people. If you're looking at Pax8 and margin is your only concern, we're not the right company. If that's the only thing that you want is price, and you don't care what you get with it, that's just not what Pax8 does. Going to something like Pax8, you're going there for the value, for the resources. We do a ton of free education. We do some paid stuff too, but we're not making, none of it's profit. It's all for taking our team, paying our team to do certain things, right? We have pro services team that does migrations for folks. We do Azure lift and shifts. We do email migrations, right? These are all things that I even think about. You and I have talked about this, going back and being an MSP and just saying, I'm going to use the pro services to do all my work, collect that mailbox money and sit back and relax. Those are the things that are completely that you don't see, right? Because, as MSPs, we're always trying to find the best deal And we think that that's the, that's what's going to save us. But saving a few pennies or even a few dollars in one spot and not realizing that you're losing it on efficiencies and things that you have to chase, that's a big difference. And again, not a plug for PAX 8, just knowing I've been on both sides of this fence. And from a PAX 8 perspective, it's all about the resources. We're not, PAX 8's not making a killing off of these vendors. It's all about blowing it up and offering it to, higher numbers, right? Getting the numbers and taking care of those numbers. 85% of trouble tickets that go through PAX 8 get handled by PAX 8, not by the vendor. That's a pretty strong number. That doesn't happen. I don't see that happening anywhere else. And that's because we do take pride. We train our folks up on the products. We try to learn it as best we can. Sure, there's certain things that happen through Microsoft that we can't necessarily support because it's not our product and we can only go to a certain level. But we also do have a hell of a lot more bargaining power than just a single MSP does, like George said earlier. So, I mean, those are the main differences between it. At the end of the day, you have to feel comfortable with where you're buying it from. I get that, now some of these PSA companies or PSA RMM companies are becoming, trying to evolve into the marketplace that PAX 8's already creating, that cloud marketplace. And that's really where it's going to go to, right? There's not even going to be talk of distribution anymore. It's going to be talking about marketplaces and where.
Well, but hold on. To your point, there are some vendors who are trying to do that and already have been doing some version of that, whether it's automated or not. But then in Kaseya's
Right.
view, they're just like, let's just keep on buying companies, keep on plugging the gaps so that we have as much of the stack as possible so that we have it all. Our friend Brent comes in again. He's like, ease of doing business is much more than product cost. When a vendor is difficult to deal with for whatever reason, frustration is not worth the perceived savings. 100%. 100%, Brent. But back to the on-prem exchange boxes. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the MSP say, yeah, let me go buy some servers, put it in a rack, get the software, start hosting the backup DR at my rented rack in wherever. But then all the time, all the liability, all the extra effort that come into that, and
right.
Is it worth it, right? Like, I guess scale is one part of the conversation. Like, how much effort do you have to put in to get past your, to get to these upper levels? 1, 2.
Right.
How much time's involved in that? That's part of the scale conversation. 3, are you really worried about trying to squeeze every ounce of blood out of the stone because you're not growing, or is your goal to go wide,
right.
and add more customers in order to grow that way?
And I mean, to get back to the marketplace just a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of differences here. I mean, if you're going to go, and you made this point, if you're going to go someplace and, they're your PSA, but you have to use the tools that they have purchased or bought, right? How is that going to work better with PAX 8 is truly the oh Lord, long day today. It is that space, right? The marketplace, because you could be using one AV provider and then say, hey, this isn't working out for me. Come back to PAX 8 and we could say, okay, well, here's some other options.
Right. You don't have, it's not just one product.
Right. You have true options. We're being agnostic and saying, okay, we know your business and what you've been doing. Here's something else that you can try. And I think that's the big separation between what some of the, they were never trying to create that marketplace. They just know if they buy up enough stuff that they all have to use it with that, as opposed to having multiple options like an actual marketplace has, like Amazon. If you don't have to use just one thing when you buy it on Amazon, you can go to a bunch of different places, then do your pricing or your value and check out all the reviews and all of that stuff. So I think that's more where PAX 8 is heading with what's going on in the environment today. And I believe that we have definitely a leg up on some of this other stuff. I don't think you could ever change that in this other place, because it's whatever they own is on the line card.
So looking at Brent, coming back to Brent, I love this comment. I would rather dodge cars on the freeway during rush hour. He was very clear about this scenario. Dodging cars on the freeway during rush hour, than run another mail server again. I agree with you, Brent. I don't argue that at all, but the same goes for the backup, the backup or the data center, play, the backup play, I had a question about another guy who was like, well, I'm going to, why go out and buy all the Unify stuff, right? Because it's cheap, but then have to manage all your own firmware, do your own, host your own controller, go some, like, it all comes back to how much does it cost, total cost of ownership end to end, to me, right? And I just don't, I would rather plug it in once, and unless it burns out, I don't have to worry about the management, the firmware, the updates, updating the back end controller at each place. Like, at what point are we just doing stuff because we're cheap on the front end and pay on the back end?
Right. 100%. And you have redundancy built in, and that redundancy plugs into a backplane, and the backplane fails.
Listen, I get it. There's no one way. Everybody has decided their way, but like, then then the question is, when do you update your view, right? How do you keep up with the melding and the molding and the shift in the market to decide when to make a adjustment? And then, like, usually the work to put all this stuff happens up front. How often are you going back and adjusting it, right? Like, I don't know. I just feel like if the average MSP account's 3 years, that's the magic number, right? They say after that it's gravy, right? Then once you put it in and it's running, even if you're doing it the hard way, how often are you going to go back within that 3-year period and make an adjustment? I argue you're not.
No, unless it's on-prem.
Well, unless it's on-prem, or unless you're making an entire shift, right? You've decided, hey, I don't want SentinelOne. I want Silence, whatever, right? You're just switching a vendor in that particular line item. So I don't know. I know we've been all over the place on this topic, but I just feel like, you said, I'm just using what you said, earlier just now. Hey, our goal is to try and buy in volume, help everybody as we're going up so that everybody benefits, right? Is that the view of the MSP from a sales perspective? If it is, you want to worry about less moving parts and you want to scale. You want to add more customers. If the answer is you're not adding a lot of new customers, then maybe you do have to look back and say, how do I monetize every blinking light that I can so that I can get the most out of each customer? I guess that's really the alpha and the beginning and the end of it, right?
Yeah, and I hate to say it like this. I mean, listen, there are companies that don't need to, they have a size, they like it, and they don't need to blow up or grow or do that, and that's okay. But separate from those types of companies, if you're not growing, you're dying. That's just the way I feel like it's. You have to keep growing, whatever that means. It doesn't always mean dollar. It doesn't always mean people. It's just in some way, shape, or form, you should be growing your business to get to a certain point. There should be a plan, and that's where that falls out too. Is if there's no plan, then you don't have a clue. Are you growing? What are you growing to? What's your goal?
Well,
that comes into a whole other conversation.
Not to go back and reference, I always called him Dr. Doom. That was just my nickname, but Paul Dipple. And the reason I say that is because every time you thought you did what he asked for, he just changed his mind, and there's a whole nother set of things. But anyway, I guess that was the maturity scale. It's like, I'm a freshman all over again. He's like, listen, if you run your business like you're going to sell it, you may decide to never sell it, but you're going to really like what the bottom line numbers look like in the end, right? I mean, if every year you're running lean and you're trying to make sure that you're doing maximum profit dollars at the end, you're going to be happy with the outcome on your tax return, right? Well, minus the taxes part. Maybe profit and loss sheet is probably what I'll say.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'm going crazy today. All right. Let's shift directions.
Welcome to the 3-hour version of the MSP Initiative. We're just getting started, folks.
I mean, listen, we've always kept it to an hour, but we can always go elsewhere. I'm gonna make it a whole drive time sports radio show, man.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we start talking Philly sports, it's all over.
I'll save you from that because there's not a lot of good things happening in Philly sports right now.
I had to listen to it with you on the ride home. So
but I mean, think what's happened already. Carson Wentz is gone. I guess the Sixers are doing good, but that's for another conversation. Okay, moving on. So at what point does the marketing conversation come up when it comes to technology, right? I'm not trying to get political, but let's throw this out there. Facebook, privacy. Google, privacy. Okay? Facebook has like WhatsApp, Instagram, all these things tied to it, right? Like, at what point, because everyone has to interact with these platforms, are you segregating your traffic so that you're just dealing with the pieces that you're dealing with. Unfortunately, when you install the app on your phone and you accept the 200-page terms of service that nobody reads, Ken, have you read that? I don't know if I've actually read that.
Word for word, George. Word for word.
Yeah, when you activated that Android, I know you read every freaking line.
Yeah, right.
Like once you install the app, you accept. They got it all, right? Because you know, opted in. Do you see MSPs consulting with their businesses saying, hey, you know, we're watching this traffic for you. We want to consult, you know, to make sure that your data and your customer data, right, because that you're holding behind your stuff is not actually, you know, back to the beginning of the webinar, which is, hey, these Chrome apps are monitoring your bank account when you sign into the web. You look at your balance. It's kind of scary news, right? So now, you know, we already said for a long time there is no data privacy law like there is over in Europe, although states are trying to put them in place. It's going to be impossible to navigate. It'll be a minefield, but there's got to be a national one, and that's a scary thought. But
yeah,
what do you tell the customer of the MSP? What does the MSP tell their customer about this topic right now? Because at this point, it's all in the news, just like the hacks, right? Just like all the data breaches, just like SolarWinds and all the other Sonic Walls, Day, all these guys that have popped up, even just this year. This conversation doesn't seem to leave the headline. So what is your advice to the MSP when this topic comes up?
Well, I mean, this conversation should be being had on a regular basis anyways. It should have been in your, you know, we talk about this, your stack should encompass every one of these. We talked about this before, right? You should have DNS filtering, you should have MFA tools, you should have password management, and I don't care which way you go with it. These are all tools that should be built right into your stack. And if you have to go a little bit farther, you should be talking about SOC and SIM solutions and rolled into that stack. So then you're not talking about this. You don't have to have the conversation again, other than as new things pop up, and this should be built into your contract. We've had this conversation.
Yeah. But Ken, let me hold you right there, right? So if you MFA your desktop, you MFA your Outlook, you MFA your file sync and share, you MFA all this stuff, but then Facebook's just usurping data. You're not who's MFAing Facebook? Are you MFAing Facebook? I don't know. I don't see it. I'm walking all day long and Facebook just opens up on every computer. If you try and go to somebody's computer, you type in Facebook, guarantee you they're signed in 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah, no, you're true. But that's also part of the education piece that I was talking about that's rolled into the stack. That comes with your education. Honestly, if you're talking about being secure and you have to be secure, I don't think Facebook should be allowed on a business computer. If you're in a spot where it has to be protected, you're right. There's no way to make it so that when you think they're on there just doing good things all the time. Plus, it's open. Facebook has their control, right? Like you said, you signed the agreement. So Facebook is one of those things that, you know, unless your business relies on it, then you have a whole other problem. It's still education, right? It's talking about when, where, and how to use these things, and if at all,
the line is blurred. You have all these people working remotely. They're at home. They're checking their stuff. They're on their work computer. It's not MFA'd. We know this.
Right.
There's no concept, right? You put your cell phone number in. Trust me, it's not happening. So at what point is that filtering? Is that, you know, like, do you have to go all the way back to, hey, the terms of the acceptable policy for the company and then start implementing? Like, there's got to be a business conversation before a technology one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still getting figured out. I mean, especially the work from home thing is such a vast change that we didn't even think about. Just from security alone, even the larger companies had a hard time implementing it, right? Because they had to rush to get these people connected. And now they're saying, oh, we got to go back. We didn't follow even our own guidelines to put these people at home. Now we have to go back and reevaluate what we did because we did it so fast. And, you know, part of that evaluation is going to be, are they using their home computers for work, or are we giving them our equipment, and our equipment is going to be limited to the things we want it to be, you know, to be worked on. And I mean, we know that's not the easiest thing, but if you're talking about certain security levels, you're exactly right. There is no, it's a fine line between having Facebook open up on your work computer.
I just think there's a due diligence part, because here's how I put it all together. Ready? You tell your customer you're doing everything reasonably possible to protect whatever data you have on them.
Sure.
Okay. And then this backdoor is occurring because they're all doing it, right? They're buying, they're collecting data on you to then sell to somebody else. And then that entity has a breach. Then didn't by proxy, you also have a problem too, right? They collected data on you and with your data, that data could include customer data. Now they got breached. It now creates a much bigger storm now.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to figure out I'm trying to help Darren out here, but he said he just posted something, but I don't know. He posted my email. Oh, that was me. He didn't answer me back. All right.
Oh no,
My address, but he can
Darren's
see
got
my email address, right? You can see it on there.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Just making sure.
Darren's hanging out, man. He's driving the RV up and down his little van. He actually got a pretty cool vehicle, and he's took a page out of our book and started visiting places, which is great. All right, last topic of the day, and then we'll drive it to the end of the show. How do you live in a scenario where you and another MSP are both servicing the same end customer? Think about that scenario.
As an MSP?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, all right. I know where you're going with this, but I mean, in our world of MSPs that we know, it would probably be very simple, because you have your prerequisites for how it's going to work and what you're going to work on and what they're going to work on. But I know that we're not in that perfect world, and we don't always choose the other MSPs that you're working with. So again, though, I still believe in upfront contracts and, setting the expectations upfront in front of the customer, so that when something does fall apart, and it will in certain cases, you can always roll back to, this is not where, this is where the line is crossed. We're dealing with this MSP was supposed to deal with that. I mean, in most cases, you really shouldn't it shouldn't be that case where if you can handle it all, you probably should.
Well, but there's certain scenarios, right? What happens?
Yeah, here's your scenario.
All right, here's the scenario. You have one MSP, and in that MSP agreement, certain parts have terms outside of the whole contract, right? Let's say I signed up for a hardware as a service or backup as a service or some other SaaS solution that had a separate term than the actual contract term. I decide I want to start shifting elsewhere, but I still got to ride this out because it's not economical for me to pay out
the
whole term on these items. Now I got like two factors in place.
Well,
that happens a lot.
I agree. I've seen it happen. I mean, look, in some cases, it might be worth taking the pain out and either buying those devices or finding a way to, just get them out of the picture altogether. Because if they're not, first of all, in this situation that you just described, this other MSP is not going to really care that much about a whole lot. They're just collecting a check. They're not going to care if things break. They're probably not going to rush to fix things. And, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, especially where something like this, they're going to be bitter that you're the new person coming in, and they're probably going to even invent ways for it to, bounce back on you when something happens. So, and it depends on the whole situation, but in some of these cases, I might not take the customer on at all. Depending upon, what's happening, right? Obviously, if it's lucrative and we know that they're going to be out the door and we can sign certain things in place that state, look, this is where we can't step in, or we can, and you're going to pay twice because we're supporting something that they should be. But if it's going to be hitting a brick wall every time you have to deal with the other company, you got to weigh that when you're talking about doing business with a company like that. I know sometimes it can be hard, but
but here's the sandwich
you deal with long term.
But here's the sandwich that occurs. The reason why those terms are in place are likely not the MSP saying, hey, I got to make sure I get my money out. It's more because their upstream vendor has a term on them, right?
Right.
They're stuck, right? They don't want to be holding the bag if somebody stops paying the bill on this side, right?
No, I get it. But again, that's their problem in certain cases, right? For you as an MSP, you're stepping in a minefield, basically, because you have no clue what that relationship was. You have no clue why this guy, this company wants to switch to you and has tie, even though they're roped into a couple of devices with these other vendors. You got to get to the root of all that too, to make sure that you're not taking an explosive situation on just to get a couple $1,000s a month in recurring revenue and hoping for the long term. I guess it depends on the length of the contract, and why it all happened. What happened? Why are you leaving this other company, even though you're tied to these devices? What happened? And I would even go so far as to call the vendors, the vendors themselves, not the MSP, and just kind of get a feel for, hey, look, I'm not trying to go around anything. I'm trying to help something here. Is there something we should know about?
Have you heard of an amicable situation where there's a term on the back end and they're transferring the responsibility of the remainder of the term between one and the other?
Yes. I will tell you straight up. I had Datto do it for us when I was an MSP. It was tricky in a few spots, but at the same time, it was basically, look, it's either going to be lost and turned into, the MSP will owe the money, so the end user won't care. The MSP has the contract with, Datto in this case. I reached out to Datto. Datto, had a program or had a plan set up for this type of thing. They talked to the other MSP and worked it out. So they transferred over from that MSP to our MSP. We did white glove. We made the other MSP feel comfortable and just said, look, it happens. And if it happens the other way, we would expect you to have, that you would expect us.
How many vendors do you think have a plan for this? I don't think.
I don't know that many do, but I gotta expect that it does happen more than we think, because I can think of a number of other things where this had happened. And PAX 8 calls it change of channel, from a standpoint of when they want to change distribution, right? Of course, we have a plan for that. For the vendors, when that happens between partners, I'm pretty sure there's even a form that Datto had you fill out to make sure everything was on the up and up and kind of went through the process. Again, this was however many years ago, but I would think you see it more often than not, right? We're all in this business. People want to change. The customer doesn't necessarily want to be locked into that. I mean, look, some MSPs have it built in. If you pull out early because they're going to have to pay it for the whole term, there's this fee, right? This is what it's going to cost. If they have that built in and the customer's still willing to pay to get away from them, they get paid. Everything gets shifted over. They're not even getting, now they're not even getting billed for the extra time on the device because now it's being moved over to your MSP. But if it were me, the first thing I would do would be go to the vendor and say, hey, look, I have, you're one of my vendors. We'd love to move this over, or else we're just not going to be able to take it on. And it could be that these guys just pull out and cause a whole bunch of disarray, right? From that standpoint,
it doesn't have to be like that. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
It could, listen, I get there's a competitive balance, but
right.
It doesn't always have to be, MSP on MSP crime.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like in our world, right? The MSPs that we deal with, the ones that I was friendly with back in the day, I could call them up and say, hey man, this is crazy. What's going on? And then they would be honest with me and say, listen, I'm going to switch them over. You don't know what you're up against. And I might not even take them on because I now learned that but usually it was friendly going back and forth. They would just say, yeah, one of my guys blew it and they're not willing to give us a second chance. And I'd rather see it go to you than somebody else. We would always be friendly with each other and just, honest and try to make it white glove on both sides just in case something happened. But only a few times. I have had that MSP on MSP crime where, the exiting MSP wouldn't give us passwords to stuff. And it always got ugly and it was always a pain in the butt, right? Because you have to try to find ways to get around that and then have to explain to the customer, I'm sorry, but your existing MSP has decided to, not be helpful in this case and try to put things up.
Well, I hope everyone got something good out of today. It was an interesting path through the hour. Again, this was recorded. It's on mspinitiative.com. You can see the list of the webinars, podcast pre-recorded. You can go back and watch those. Hopefully you got the messaging in the beginning of the webinar, Channel Strong Tour, Lunch and Learns, prize giveaways, all available, all free to you. Please join us if you can. Join us back again Thursday, 1:00 Eastern time. We will keep the party going. All right, Mr. Soprano.
Nice. Here you go, baby. Tony Soprano.
Take it easy.
Bye, everyone.